This is the St. John's Bridge. It spans the Willamette River just north of Portland, Oregon. I am calling it a hidden gem because it is a beauty, but is not nearly as well known as it deserves to be. In this video, we start with an introduction to the history and design of the bridge, which was completed in 1931. We end with a walking tour showing details of the bridge and some scenic views. In other videos, we discuss construction in more detail and present the design explained in the words of the engineer, David Steinman. First question, where is the St. John's Bridge? This map of the Portland area shows the Willamette River coming from the south, dividing the city into east and west halves. About 6 miles northwest of the city, it also separates the suburbs of Linton and St. John's. You can't see the bridge from the city, but it is only a few minutes' drive. In the early years of the 20th century, business was developing and population was growing in these suburbs. But the only way they had to cross the river was by ferry boat. The nearest bridge was miles away in the city. And there was the arrival of that new creature, the automobile, which demanded freedom to roam. These suburbs needed a bridge of their own. In the words of this editorial from 1922, quote, "The St. John's Bridge is no pipe dream, but a stern necessity." End quote. The entire editorial, which is fun to read as a snapshot of history, is included at the end of the video. Once there was the will to build the bridge, they had to find the money. That came from a bond issue. In 1928, it passed, allotting $4.25 million to build the bridge. To design the bridge, they engaged the nationally known bridge engineering firm of Robinson and Steinman. More about them in a minute. Now, where to build it, and what type of bridge to build. Choosing the location is a practical decision, with the main goal of keeping the cost to a minimum. This topographic map shows most of the important factors. After investigating several possible locations, they settled on Philadelphia Avenue, shown here by the arrow and dashed line. It was at a narrow part of the river to keep the span short. As a central street in St. John's, it was good for traffic flow, and the elevations on either side of the river made it an easy place to construct the approaches to a high bridge. As for choosing a design, the builders first considered a cantilever, a kind of truss like this one at Longview. But it turned out that a suspension span could be built for less and had the advantage of attractiveness. With a site chosen and the design in hand, the bidding process came to a happy conclusion with a total under the amount of the bond budget. We will now take a brief tour of the order of construction. This is covered in more detail in the two-part video on construction. Here we are, September 1929, starting from scratch. St. John's is on the east side. As with any building, first came the foundations. For the bridge, this included concrete piers for the main towers, viaduct piers for the approaches, and housings for the anchorages. In this photo, you can see most of the completed foundation work with the tower already started. Next came the bridge towers. The steel tower from the top of the concrete base to the platform for the cable saddle is about 285 feet. The photo shows the massive wooden scaffolding used for their construction. Next, the cables were strung over the towers. In the photo, you can see the catenary of the cables and the hanger ropes in place ready to hold the road deck. That was January of 1931. The final step was hanging the road deck and placing the concrete, which was completed by the middle of May in 1931. Total construction time was under 2 years, 21.5 months to be precise. Opening day, however, was held off a month to coincide with the annual Portland Rose Festival. With a parade and floats, the opening ceremony was ordained by Rose Queen Rachel Atkinson. At the time it was finished, with a main span of 1,207 feet, it was the longest suspension span west of Detroit. Now let's meet the designing engineer, David Steinman. He took great effort regarding the artistic design. Writing about the bridge for Engineering News Record, he said, quote, "In the St. John's Bridge, the desire to secure a beautiful public structure was a governing consideration," end quote, which is really our theme in this set of videos. What makes this an attractive structure? In addition to scenic location, suspension bridges have some basic advantages, starting with the inherently graceful curve of the cable and the gentle arc of the road deck. Note how both are remarkably slender in proportion to the distance they span. But it is the architectural treatment of the towers that gives this bridge its unique personality. Here are the features Steinman thought were important. Regarding the towers, by adding the angled external legs for lateral support, he was able to avoid the usual center cross-bracing. That allows for wide portal openings with pointed Gothic arches above and below the roadway. Looking closer at the towers, note the pointed arches are also in the upper portals and in the pedestrian passages. The arch theme is carried through in the viaduct piers, particularly noticeable on the east, so it creates a pleasing, consistent theme. Note the matching designs in the concrete work of the main piers and east anchorage. To finish off, they chose an unusual color for the bridge. While most are painted gray or silver, the official color here is verde green, reportedly chosen to harmonize with the wooded hillside on the west. Let us take a walk over the bridge and see if you think Steinman succeeded in his artistic vision. The best time to visit is in fall, when the sun is likely to be out in the afternoon and the maples are making their best show of color. On the St. John's side, there is street parking near the bridge entrance. Here we are starting up the north side. The sidewalks are wide enough to walk comfortably. There is a nice aerial view looking down into Cathedral Park, though quickly the ground becomes a long ways down, over 165 feet at the last support tower. Walking up the approach span, you can feel the vibration created by the heavy trucks as they pass. But notice the vibration almost stops when you step onto the suspended structure. Up close, you can explore the details of the structure. The defining feature of the suspension bridge is the cable, which presents a graceful curve from any viewpoint. The road deck is hung from the cables by suspender ropes, which are shown here connecting to the truss. Approaching the towers, they are striking. Tall and slender, yet strong enough to support the weight of the bridge and all it carries. Here, Steinman's design gives the St. John's its unique personality. At the tower, stand at the railing and consider, looking down, the roadway is 200 feet above the water. Looking up, the cable crosses the tower 146 feet above the road. The spires add 64 feet of additional height. That makes the top just over 400 feet above the water. Continuing on our walk, arriving on the west side, a few yards to the south there are steps leading to a trail that winds up the steep hillside. Only a short way up is this secret spot from which you get the best scenic photo of the river and bridge. When you start back over the bridge, this is the view looking to the east. From the west tower, this is the view looking eastward with the long arc of the truss curving toward St. John's. From the center, this is the view south toward Portland, which is just visible on a clear day. The bridge is the Burlington Northern Lift Bridge, which is still working. From the east tower, this is the view westward with a river barge and tug. Returning to the east side, you can either walk or drive down into Cathedral Park. It gets the name Cathedral Park because of the cathedral-like view through the Gothic arches. From the river's edge, you get a different perspective. Here again are the vertical dimensions. The top of the concrete pier is 60 feet above low water level, the road deck is 200 feet above water, and the top of the tower is just over 400 feet. Now the horizontal dimensions. The center span is 1,207 feet, each side span is 430 feet. The total suspended span is 2,107. Clearance for shipping at the center, from water level to the lowest part of the steel truss, is 205 feet. The tallest of the piers supporting the east road deck is an impressive 163 feet tall. Here the cable descends from the tower and transfers its great load to the anchorage and the earth. By my reckoning, engineer Steinman definitely succeeded in creating a beautiful public structure. The St. John's is a gem and a pleasure to visit. In other videos we cover construction of the bridge and present the tower design in Steinman's own words.